Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have always enjoyed traveling, and most especially traveling without a set plan. I suppose that is because for most of my life, that is how I had to travel. When you are unable to read maps or road signs, you spend a lot of time wandering around and getting lost. You see, reading was always a struggle for me. I had so many tricks I would use to avoid reading in class. Most of those tricks resulted in me getting sent out of class. I dreamed of a life outside of school, one that held more adventure for me, one that would enable me to see the world. So, in eighth grade, I dropped out. My dream of travel turned out to be just that, a dream. The only place I traveled was up and down roads in the sugarcane fields. Not much adventure there. But finally, one day I was able to get a traveling job. I became a broker for heavy equipment and spent my days traveling the back roads of the Southeast. While this was interesting, it was also a challenge. Without the ability to read a map or even road signs, I trusted my compass and God to guide me. Wandering without a set plan became the way I spent my days. Then God connected me to Hope Adult Learning. Little did I know how much learning to read would open my eyes to the world. Learning to read is often taken for granted by those who have had that ability from a young age. But for adults who have never had that opportunity to learn to read, it can be a life-challenging experience when they finally gain this skill. That is what I have found. Suddenly, books, scriptures, and even simple signs in public places took me to a whole new meaning for me. My vocabulary has increased greatly, and my confidence in spelling is growing each week. I was even able to fill out an online application without help, something I never would have attempted without learning to read. I never dreamed how learning to read would even open the door to healings, misunderstandings in my family. It is a great adventure. One of the most fun parts of this adventure of learning to read, however, has been how reading has expanded my world. Although I still have not yet physically traveled the world like I dreamed, I certainly have visited interesting places through the pages of travel books. When I first began learning to read, I had no idea there were 7 continents, let alone what their names, sizes, and locations were. Now I am on my 5th book about the continents. 2 more to go. I have learned about the history of each continent as well as about the unique animals, climate, and people of each. Now I can connect with the shows I watch on the National Geographic channels or Animal Planet. Through reading, I have traveled to many places featured on those channels. By learning to read, I have also been on many voyages with the well-loved Dr. John Dolittle, who learned the language of animals and became a veterinarian. His home in Puddleby-on-the-Marsh, England, was full of a mix of creatures, from Polynesia the parrot to Gub-Gub the pig. Together we traveled to Africa to treat monkeys who were infested with a terrible disease, encountering pirates, storms, and unfriendly islanders during our voyage. Then, surviving a terrible shipwreck along the way, we were off to South America in search of Long Arrow, the world's greatest naturalist. Our voyage took us back to the west coast of Africa, where Dr. Dolittle established a postal system for sending messages around the world carried by birds. This was long before the invention of 20th century airmail. It was there that I also met Mudface the turtle, the oldest living creature on Earth, who survived the Great Flood. Reading a cricket in Times Square enabled me to learn more about the busy city of New York. I learned about the subway system and about the street vendors who lined the sidewalks. We even put up a satellite feed of Times Square so we could watch hundreds of people rushing to work. After seeing that, I prefer to read about New York rather than actually go there. And now, by reading the book Balto and the Great Race, I have traveled to Alaska, where the race to deliver a life-saving medicine for diphtheria is on. I have learned about the importance of the early dog sled teams, and especially one of the lead dogs, Balto. In January 1925, an outbreak of diphtheria threatened the population of Nome, Alaska, and the nearest vaccine supply was 650 miles away. 20 teams carried the medicine in blizzard conditions. Balto led the last relay team through some of the worst conditions of the journey. Today, you can go to Central Park in New York and see a monument of this brave dog. The 938-mile Iditarod race, held each March from Anchorage to Nome, is a tribute to the important dog sled teams. By reading, I was able to follow this year's race and learn about many of the mushers and dogs. These books, and so many others I have now read, have opened my eyes to the world. Little did I know when I committed to Hope Adult Learning that my journey of learning to read would lead me to so many interesting places. It is so hard to describe what that means to me. Maybe this quote from Dr. Seuss can say it for me. To put it quite simply, the more you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you will go. Thank you for your attention today, and thank you to Hope Adult Learning for opening my window to the world. Thank y'all.